Hey folks,
Okay, good
hey
evening,
folks, hey
Absolute
folks,
Packer
hey folks,
Nation.
hey folks.
You're hearing from somebody that you haven't heard from in a long time, probably 5 or 6 weeks. This is Andy Hetzel popping in here. Believe it or not, I'm still a part of the crew, but there's a reason why I haven't been a part of the crew for, let's say, 5 to 6 weeks. And I'll try and keep this short, but it's still something important to share. The reason I was out was I contracted a really bad strain of E. coli that had what I'll call a really nasty complication called HUS. And the short story on that is E. coli is bad for anybody. It can be cured fairly easily. But if you get this complication called HUS, which only 1% of people who contract E. coli get, so it's very, very rare, it can kill you. And shall we say, it damn near did kill me. So I've been at Bellin Hospital in Green Bay, and then I went to UW-Madison Hospital. They have more, I'll call it specialists, and they have, I think, a better ICU and things of that nature. So I started off at Bellin, and then I got flown via helicopter to UW-Madison to, for lack of a better term, save my life. I wasn't quite aware how close I was to being on death's door, and I'm not trying to be morbid by any means, but it was close. It was very close. So I was in a medically induced coma at UW for 2 weeks, getting better. They shoved a bunch of IVs and needles and breathing tubes and whatnot all over me. I've been poked and prodded and God knows what so many times, but I'll allow it because, like I said, it saved my life. But so after I was in the 2-week medically induced coma. My family was all down there. And when I woke up, and nobody knew when you're going to wake up, including myself, when I woke up. And I didn't know where the heck I was, how I got there, and why I was there. But I woke up. No breathing tube. And my dad was there, and he kind of let me know what had happened. And I would say it took me a good day, maybe day and a half, to really process some of this stuff. And I was on some heavy-duty meds, anti-seizure meds. So my brain was all foggy and it was kind of paranoid. But I started to progress pretty rapidly in terms of recovery. You know, they had to wait until I got out of this coma, but the nurses and the doctors all said that, you know, your recovery in terms of timeline and progression was nothing short of miraculous. And I was like, I don't know if I believe this because I have no baseline, you know, but I'll take their word for it now based on what I learned about it. I've lost a lot of short-term memory, which that's the biggest thing that really sucks, because I was telling the podcast guys that I honestly don't recognize 50% of the Packer roster, which is very odd because I'm trying to add some value. And if you don't know who a player is, it's tough to do that. But I got discharged after 5 days getting out of the coma, went back to Green Bay and started reconnecting with people. And I've started some rehab and I'm doing well. And I watched the first Packer game with my dad, the Bear game, and I knew I was getting back to normal because I started really bitching and moaning about what I was seeing. I think that was kind of the thing that started everything. And then I also watched the Viking game. Or no, I didn't. I should take that back. Like I said, my memories are hazy. But I went to the Viking game with my dad stayed outside for about a half, and then got to be really in tune with my body right now because it's recovering. We went inside, watched the rest of it. And then I watched the pitiful game today. So long story short, I'm coming back really well, pretty quickly, no setbacks. And I have to say this, the amount of people that have helped me, whether it's doctors, nurses, family, friends, has been astounding. I really can't put a price tag, or I can't express enough how important those people have been, to include Elliot and Jeremy and everybody. It's just been unbelievable. So this has been this has been a life-changing event, but it's been a life-changing event in a good way. I'll still bitch about the Packers, and I still love my Packers, but the priority level's dropped a little bit, and I'm only 39. And I like to say, if you can't come out more spiritual or just more appreciative, even after something this bad happens, then I like to think you're spiritually or morally bankrupt. You really have to look at your life and what you got. And I have a young daughter and all those things. So that's kind of where I'll leave that at. And again, I'm doing great. I'm doing better. And I couldn't be happier to do another Packer podcast because that means I'm getting back to being normal. So with that said, that's kind of I'll say the nasty stuff. Oh, was that a crowd screaming?
Yes,
sir.
Did that sound okay?
Yeah, it did. For a second, I thought it was something else, but I'll take it. I'll take it. So, so that's kind of that. Normally, I told the guys I'm more invested in some of the pre-show planning and all this kind of stuff. But obviously, my main focus is just taking care of my mental and physical health, which again is doing great. So, we'll talk about all the Packers stuff that I can, and I'll have to kind of reprieve myself on players and coaches I don't know who they are. It's the best way to put it. When my dad came to watch one of the games, I looked at number 80, who is Jimmy Graham, and I go, who the hell is this guy? And he goes, well, that's Jimmy Graham. We signed him, whatever. And I go, well, where did he play? What position is he? I mean, I didn't even know what position he played. And he kind of looked at me with blank eyes. But those kinds of things are I'll call it the short-term memories that they wipe everything. You don't remember anything. And it's crazy. And a lot of them will come back. But I also laugh at myself a little bit because I didn't realize they fired Dom Capers. They brought in, is it Mike Pettin? Is that his name?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Because after the first, I'll say game and a half, I was like, Mike Pettin is a lot like Dom Capers because the product on the field looks a lot like what he had. And obviously that's just tongue in cheek stuff, but I didn't know they had done some of that stuff. So I'll laugh about that and other people can laugh at me about that. And when you get there, you're back to normal.
Well, and we are absolutely ecstatic to have you back, Andy. We're glad that, I think through this all, I'm just enamored with your will to get back to where you were, your fight, your willpower. It's really inspirational. I think I told you that before, but it really, when you first told me about that, I shed a few tears over it because, like I explained to you, and I'm not going to go into detail, but I had a life altering moment years ago as well. So, I could relate so much to Andy. And, I think I didn't have as much fight as Andy did today. But it's so good to hear your voice. So good to hear you back in the fold. And I think today we got some short clips of your humor coming back to you. So,
that's a big part of me. And obviously I appreciate that tremendously. Like I said, there's been so many people, to include you guys, that have done so much. And again, at first, when I lost some of these, when I figured out that I was losing these short-term memories, I'm like, wow, this is frustrating. But then you find out it's just scary because you look at pictures on phones or you hear people or friends or whatever tell you about what happened. And I got a face like, you don't remember any of it, zero. And it's just, that's kind of scary. But some things are coming back. And, particular to this podcast, what scared the crap out of me was, when I was looking through, I knew I did a podcast, a Packer podcast. I wasn't exactly sure who I did it with. And I kind of remembered Elliot, but what was very scary was I had no recollection of Jeremy or who you were. That's scary stuff. Mm-hmm. And then I saw some pictures and I saw some other notes, and those started to come back to me slowly. And according to the nurses and doctors, that would happen. It's just going to take some time. But when you're looking there and you're looking at pictures, you're looking at notes and stuff like that, and you have no recollection of who a person is, what they look like, how they talk and all that, it's beyond scary. It'll bring you to your knees. But mm-hmm. I've come away from that in a good way. So, and all you can do is keep on keeping on. And one last thing I will say is about my recovery. I'm not a guy who sits around. So my will to recover, I can't tell you exactly where that came from, but as you guys know, I'm a big cyclist. I was in probably the best shape of my life right before this happened. I went on a 65-mile bike ride the day that the symptoms supposedly happened. That was a personal record for me. I was up to like 1,000 miles for the year. My goal was 2,000 miles. So long story short, I think being in really good shape helped. Was it the thing that that put everything over the edge and made me survive? Probably not. But you're damn right that it helped. So, I'm glad I made those changes. And here's a little piece of trivia for you. I don't know if it's necessarily trivia, but it's just, I'll put it out there basically. So there's like a theoretical / experimental drug that was developed in Germany I think it was for seizure related patients. I don't know if it was E. coli patients, but it was a certain type of patient. And, my dad, if anything, he's the most stubborn son of a bitch you'll ever meet. And if he's going to get something done, he's a business owner. He's going to get something done. He got his doctor on the phone and he said, I want you to get this German doctor on the phone. The reason I bring all this up is this one dose of this medicine. I think it's some kind of liquid, anti-seizure drug, if you will. It's not like it's a huge concoction. We'll say it's X amount of milliliters. One dose is $18,000.
Oh, wow.
What?
It's the most expensive drug in the world. And I got 3 doses of this.
Oh,
but,
my God.
But that is we'll say the main thing that they think saved my life. There's other things within there. And when I heard that, I go, if it was $18,000 per dose, it sure as hell better save my life. I mean, I have health insurance and there's going to be, some stuff to go through there. But yeah, so when I heard that, I was like, I didn't even know what to say, but it's kind of almost just like a piece of trivia. You're like, it's apparently the most expensive drug in the world regardless. And then I'm like, I got a dose set. And my dad's like, no, you got 3 doses. And I'm like, practically fainted, because all you're thinking about is money.
Right.
But yeah, going back, I mean, I recognize who you guys are now. I recognize your voices and what we're doing. But I would say 7 days ago, I wasn't exactly sure who people were. And that is it is frightening, just absolutely frightening. But it's getting better every day. So
You sound good.
Yes, you do.
I do, and I feel good.
Yes, you do.
I've been taking 3 naps a day at this point, but today I took 2 naps a day. I only took 2, and these are.
Man, I passed you up then.
Well, it was like I'm telling you, it was like I'd hit a certain time during the day, and I'd be like, I'm gonna just go into a coma, because your body's still trying to do whatever. But I think I found out that I literally wasn't eating enough and just getting enough nourishment. But when you're not hungry, you're not really eating. So I started to actually force myself to eat more. And that helped a lot. I mean, dropping naps is good. You don't want to be going on 3 or 4 naps a day. As much as I love naps, trust me, I do. You can't live life that way. So that's a small victory.
True.
Right.
So let's get on with this.
Yeah, I hear you. I'm tired of hearing about myself too.
No. That's the stuff that I would rather talk about.
No kidding, right? Yeah, it's like, is that positive related to the Packers?
I mean,
who knows?
Unless the last 2 weeks are your fault. I just,
unless you guys want to kind of start my thoughts after 3 games. So they're 1-1-1, correct? One win, 1 loss, 1 tie.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we might be splitting this into 2 episodes. So we're recording this after the
Redskin game.
The Redskin game, yeah. I guess it's not a spoiler. Anybody who's listening is going to know that already. So
no doubt.
I guess it doesn't matter.
I think one thing I noticed about the Redskin game, I mean, again, I'm not terribly in tune with the Packers this year just due to other stuff, but I'm still pretty in tune. And based on what I saw with the Bears and the Vikings, I'm like, this team can't waltz in anywhere and just think they can win. It just ain't going to happen, especially with Aaron Rodgers on basically one leg.
Right.
And the fundamentals, it was the fundamentals that really got me. Excuse me. What do they have? Like 12 penalties for 120 yards?
Yeah, it was at least 10. It was at least 10 penalties for 105 the last time I checked.
Oh my God. It was just
I don't think anybody knows what the fundamentals are anymore, though.
That's true. It's almost like it overlaps into what the league allows as fundamentals versus what the teams are coaching as fundamentals. Who the hell knows where they intersect and end, right?
Right. But in the NFL, fundamentals mean the difference between win and losing.
No doubt.
It's really a sport where you need to be on top of your game every single play. You can get away with certain stuff, but like in today's game, Kentrell Bryce not playing over the top correctly and not finding the ball, and then running into Jair Alexander and giving up the first TD of the game. Those are little things right there that obviously mean the difference between knocking that ball down or a touchdown. So
it's a game of inches on many levels. I mean, look at Rodgers threw, I would say today, I don't want to say I was surprised, but I was a little bit, but I would say Rodgers threw 3 to 4 questionable balls. But then I'm going, the guy's on one leg, and his offensive line is a sieve right now. God, he has to run out of the pocket after 1 second. So it's like one leg and you're on the run. And look, I'll tell you this, based on what I'm seeing, the talent on this roster isn't much. It's young, and I'm trying to think of the last wide receiver or tight end that was a burner. Randall Cobb, Devontae Adams, and players like that, they're good, but are they fast? Can they separate? No. They have to, be shifty and all that. And man, could this team use a burner wide receiver like an Odell Beckham, or just someone who's actually legitimately just fast, because right now they're relying on pinpoint, throws from Rodgers or busted coverage or whatever. And it's got to be at least 10 years since Packers had a burner wide receiver, at least, and they could use that.
They could use a lot of things. Speed being one thing, playmakers being the second. But before the season started, I don't like to do a lot of predictions. I don't like to say this team's going to finish whatever. But in my eyes, the Packers were at best, with full health, a 10-6 team. That was their top.
I would agree with that.
9-7, what I'm seeing. 9-7, 8-8, with a few injuries here and there and a few mistakes here and there. So I think, to your point, that this team doesn't have a lot of leeway, that they can't just walk into any game and expect to win. That's fully true. And I think, especially last week against the Vikings, we're up 21-7 at halftime, and everyone's thinking, wow, this is looking really good, And the problem with this year, though, thus far through 3 games, is every game has had a tale of a different half. The Chicago game was the worst first half I think we've seen in eternity. And then the second half was Aaron Rodgers, almost godlike, coming back and leading the team. And then we go to the Vikings first half. We start the first half off really well. And the second half, it just tanks again. And then today, first half could have been just as horrible as the first half against the Chicago Bears.
Yeah.
And then the second half was really had no relation to the other games. It was very just nondescript. It was very just blah. And there was just not a lot of, I don't know if the team gave up. It just seemed like the guys were out there and they were just exasperated with everything that was going on, And
I agree with everything you say.
So, going into the year, my biggest worries, and I think I've expressed this many times, has been the offensive line and the pass rush, I should say. And thus far, those two things have failed this team miserably. Aaron Rodgers hurt his knee, first game of the year. I don't think any of us would have ever predicted that the offensive line would have siphoned that. It was horrible, So, and then we're going back to the Viking game. Offensive line held up relatively well, even though they did give up 4 sacks, but they did hold up relatively well. And then we come to today where they pretty much siphoned again. And it was, everything in this offense is predicated on protecting Aaron Rodgers and making sure that he can have the allotted time to find his receiver. And that's not happening right now. The other thing is on the defensive side of the ball, I feel like we didn't have a stable enough pass rush that we could rely upon that could win us games. And it's coming to fruition right now. The only way that we're able to get pressure is if we run a creative cornerback blitz off the corner. It's just the only way that we're able to scheme and get something that can pressure the quarterback. And that's a huge concern. It's been my concern from day one. And it's through 3 games. It's still a huge concern. And I don't know what you can do to rectify it, because I think pretty much you have what you have. But guys like Clay Matthews getting the penalties that he is getting could lead into a whole nother episode. But I mean, our guys right now, I'm not sure there's a lot of confidence there that they would feel like they could hit a quarterback without getting called for something. So,
excuse me. Yeah. A couple of things that I had to kind of reintroduce myself to memory wise was the reporting structure that this team has. I'd forgotten about that. It's if my memory serves me correct, McCarthy, Gutekunst, and is it somebody else reported into Russ Ball? Okay, he's like the cap guy, right?
Yes, he is.
And they all report into Mark Murphy.
Mm-hmm.
I saw somewhere on Twitter somebody called it the quadrilateral of authority, and I think that's pretty well put. That reporting structure is ridiculous, and I said that I have no idea what the hell that means. I mean, it's like who owns what? Who's the football guy? It's like Mark Murphy. I see him as kind of the ambassador business guy. If he's anywhere near any of these football decisions, that's not good. I just don't like it. I'm not saying he's a bad guy, but you got three other guys kind of, what are they? They're motioning for authority or whatever, and I don't know. And to be perfectly honest, I look at McCarthy. McCarthy I think he's in deep trouble. I mean, if they don't make the playoffs, he's canned. If they make the playoffs and they lose, I think he's canned. I think they got to make like the NFC Championship for him to. I'll say this with Aaron Rodgers, but even without Aaron Rodgers, I'm looking at it. I'm like, when they put in, was it DeShone Kizer in the Bear game?
Mm-hmm.
Grant, he wasn't in there that much, but I'm looking at this team. I'm like, this team is the Browns. This team sucks. They got nothing. And, Aaron Rodgers comes out in that game and, like you said, wills them to victory. But there's, and to your point, Jeremy, a lot of the things you mentioned, you would think those things, like the upper echelon of management, whether it's Gutekunst or, McCarthy or whatever, those things are right in your face to see that they got deficiencies there. Yet they do nothing. Do they do nothing because they don't have the money? Because they have the philosophy of, we still want to be young and all this stuff? I have no idea. But there's some big old holes. And I think today, if my memory serves me correct, was it Muhammad Wilkerson? He's probably out for the season.
Looks like it. I haven't heard anything yet officially, but
he had his head in his hands and he looked, I mean, when guys like that,
they said he went to the hospital there in Washington.
Yeah. I mean, he probably tore an ACL or broke something.
Yeah, he's out.
He's probably done, and I'm looking at that and I'm like, well, who's the depth behind him? I'm like, I have no idea. There may be some depth, and part of the problem is I don't know who these players are. But, and then I look at, to your point, the offensive line. I'm like, the offensive line is it used to be a strength and now it's deteriorated quickly. Brian Bulaga used to be a badass. He's getting whipped, Now Bakhtiari, I remember him a little bit, but not a ton. Is he the left tackle or the right tackle?
Left tackle.
Okay. Now I watch him a little bit. He seems to be still pretty good. Is that a fair statement?
That's an unfair statement. He's probably one of the top three left tackles in the game.
Okay.
And I'm not the only one that thinks that. There are a lot. I'm
typically watching Bulaga, and so I'm like not really watching Bakhtiari. So I'm like, how good is he doing? Does he need help or whatever?
Yeah.
But so that's good to know. And again, for my mushy brain, these are things I need to kind of understand. But the amount of pressure they get, that defenses get on our offensive line so quickly is sometimes it's astounding. I mean, Rodgers is under pressure in 1 second now and has to move out of the pocket. If that's how they're designing their offense, I don't care how good and how nimble Rodgers is, you're going to get him killed. And that's just no way to run an offense. I'm seeping this a little bit into the Bear game, but Khalil Mack, everybody's talking about Khalil Mack. Apparently McCarthy and Pettin didn't get the memo, or not Pettin, but McCarthy didn't get the memo. Did you see his stat line for the first quarter?
Mm-hmm.
I think it was like the best overall defensive stat line for a defensive player in the history of the league in the first quarter. And I'm going, what are you doing? You might want to get him some help, but McCarthy's so stubborn to give help because he wants all the players out in the progression. But if you don't have the talent, or you just don't have, in this case, I'm telling you, McCarthy doesn't have the scheme. I have not been a fan of his scheme for some time now because his scheme appears to be, Rodgers, you run around and go win it. Now, do you need to have the weapons like the receivers and the tight ends to do it? I would say yeah, but you can use some deception. You can use some things like that. You know, you don't, I mean, they need a burner, like I said, but you can use other methods to get these guys open and to get them the ball instead of having Rodgers rush out of the pocket for his life and throw a dart 40 yards down the field on 3rd and 10, you know?
Well, and you just said it right there, 3rd and 10. That has been probably the offense's biggest problem at this point is they're getting into 3rd and long situations, and they're fitting right into what the defense wants them to do, and that's pin their ears back, rush Rodgers.
They know what they're going to have to. They're going to have to pass the ball. They're not going to run that. He's never going to run that. McCarthy.
Right.
I think I saw during the game when we were going back and forth, he hit the nail on the head. Just when things are working with the run game, he goes right back to the pass game.
Oh my God.
And to that, it's just, I think it's straight up stubbornness, and he wants to chuck the ball, which is all fine and dandy. But if you don't have the players, you don't have the time, and if you have a quarterback on one leg, you might want to change your scheme a little bit. And he just doesn't do it.
I don't care who you are in this league. If you're Bill Belichick, if you come out of the gate running the ball 10 yards, 8 yards on 2 of your very first carries like Aaron Jones did, you're going to keep feeding him the rock until that defense says, we're going to shut you down. If the defense shuts you down, then you run a nice little play action, a nice go route with Devontae Adams or Jimmy Graham or whoever it has to be, and then you light them up. So to your point that this offense and McCarthy's creativity is lacking, I was one of those people that stood up for him. I said, you know what? They're scrubbing the playbook this offseason. I want to see it, in full action in the regular season. Thus far, 3 games in, their offense has not changed. It's the same route tree. It's the same scheme. It's the same, Aaron Rodgers, 40 to 50 times a ball game, going back, winging the ball. Here we start off the game this today. Aaron, I just talked about Aaron Jones's first 2 carries, 8 yards and 10 yards, and then we don't hear him the rest of the first half.
Yeah.
And he finished the game with 6 carries, 40 yards. For the game.
That's horrible.
For the game against Washington, we had as a team 100 yards on 17 carries, 5.9 yard average. Yep. And I think I talked about it too. It was earlier on in the game in the second quarter. The first 20 plays, and I documented this because I wanted to keep tabs on it. The first 20 plays were 11 passes and nine rushes.
Excuse me.
They had 9 rushes for 50 yards, and they had 11 pass plays for 35 yards. So, and Washington was coming out and giving them 5 and 6 man fronts. That's just a gimme that, okay, you know what? I don't care what we have called. We're audibling it, and we're running the ball against that front because that is a token front to run the ball and get significant yardage off of. And today, McCarthy just kept on passing the ball and forcing themselves into 3rd and long situations. And then at that point, 3rd and long is just, it's inaccessible because they just can't get it because their line can't protect them. So,
and this is fundamental stuff. This isn't like deep schematic or whatever. This is right in front of your face type stuff. So it's very frustrating from a fan point of view. Now, again, this is more for me. I apologize, but Aaron Jones, when did we draft him? And he looks pretty darn good. I just don't remember the guy.
Yeah, fifth round of last year's draft.
Last year, okay. How did he look last year?
He was phenomenal. When he first started the year off, he was, I think, 3rd on the depth chart behind Ty Montgomery and Jamal Williams. Jamal Williams, they drafted in the 4th round last year's draft. So Montgomery came out of the gate. He played the first 2 games, got hurt in the second one. And then he was pretty much insignificant the rest of the year. Jamal Williams stepped in, played really well. And he was hurt, though, in the Bear game, which was, I think, a Thursday night game last year. In came in Aaron Jones and had a pretty solid game. I think it was like 13 carries, 49 yards. It wasn't anything great. But then the next week against Dallas, he had the game of his year. I think he had 125 yards on 19 carries. He was just lighting up the defensive front of Dallas. And he looked phenomenal. But the biggest thing with him, though, last year, he had 2 MCL sprains in each of his knees. So he has, the problem with him thus far has been availability as well as Ty Montgomery, obviously, but staying healthy. So we saw him today, and he looked
damn good.
Right.
And he looked jacked up. The other players looked like they were about to take a snooze, and he'd get 5 yards, and he looked like he got 50. I mean, I liked what I was seeing there. But like I said, unfortunately, I just couldn't remember, didn't know much about him. But then I look over McCarthy, and I'm like, well, he's not going to run this guy. It doesn't matter.
No, but I mean, I'm not a coach. I've fully admitted that. But I go in today's game, and I'm sitting on the sidelines, and I watch what Washington's given me, and I'm calling every single play a running play until they can stop me 2 plays in a row. Yeah. Until they actually force me by bringing 7, 8, 9 man fronts and just saying we're not gonna allow you to run on us anymore. And then you come over the top, and that's to the part you're talking about McCarthy's his creativity. Today it was a great example of that. I mean, there is a way to beat today's Redskin defense that came to us, and he did everything possible to not beat it by just continuing to pass and continuing to go downfield. And there was not a lot of open receivers downfield.
No, and the ones that were, they dropped the goddamn ball. Oh my God.
Cobb on third down. Lance
Rodgers had some bad passes.
Yeah. So,
but he's got one leg. And he's running around. I'll give him a little bit of, leeway. But go ahead. Sorry.
No, I want to ask you guys a question. So Aaron Rodgers did not practice this week until Saturday, I think. How much do you think that played into it?
Gotta be some.
And sort of similar to that, it felt to me like the Packers did not treat the Redskins seriously. Like they didn't do their homework. It's almost like they didn't know who they were playing until the second half.
I would agree with everything you said. And I'll tell you one thing that stunned me. It took me until, did you see the stat line on Adrian Peterson at the end? He had like 212 yards and 2 touchdowns. Now, Adrian Peterson was a great player. Keyword was. He's in his 12th year. And running backs get destroyed. They're getting hit all the time, They probably break down faster than any position player you can really think of off the top of your head, just because every time they get the ball, they're getting nailed. 12th year player, 212 yards, 2 touchdowns, and they got lit up through the air. That's why part of me is like, this looks like Dom Capers' defense, and I don't know where, and this is more a question for you guys, I guess, but I'm going, where do the draft picks end and the scheme begin on defense and things like that? It's like, how bad is the talent versus the scheme? I couldn't tell you.
Talent is below average. There's
looks
no
like it, man.
There's no ifs, ands, and buts. I mean, right now, on paper, tell me who your best defensive player is. Who is your benchmark, your face that is the defense? Okay, that quietness right there,
I know,
says it all. Because in reality, Clay Matthews has been the leader of this defense for many years. And I think, alluding back to what you were talking about, Andy, he's definitely on his last leg.
He needs to be moved inside. I don't care what they say. I don't care what he says. I don't care.
I would agree with you.
He's got to go inside, period, end of story. And if he doesn't like it, cut his ass. Because what is he making, $10 million a year?
Roughly, yeah. The problem today, their backup to Nick Perry and Clay Matthews is Reggie Gilbert. And on consecutive plays in the second quarter, Gilbert substituted for Matthews. And on 2 straight plays, Gilbert got sucked in, and Peterson kicked the ball to the outside for runs of 12 and 13 yards. And that's the other thing that's killing them, is their outside linebackers are not understanding their responsibility in the run game. Is when you sense that a run play is happening and you see the running back getting the ball, you need to hold the point of attack and allow
the angles. The angles and leverage by the defense today was beyond horrible. Beyond. I was just stunned at the lack of fundamentals. And like you said, I mean, you got these sweeps going over there. You got guys getting sucked. That first touchdown, now this wasn't even running. That first touchdown they gave up, was it 29? Is that Jair Alexander, or was that?
I'm learning. Kentrell Bryce.
And I know these guys are young and all that, but it's like I'm looking at the leverage and I'm looking at these angles and I'm going, this is like Pop Warner crap. I mean, it's just, they're not even close.
No.
I don't know.
No, across the board, I think we went into this season with a pretty good feeling that our safeties were going to be average. Thus far, they've significantly underwhelmed. They're way below average. Last week against the Vikings, I think I sent you guys that clip of Stephon Diggs' 75-yard TD where they had a two deep. They had Briggs, Kentrell Bryce, Kentrell Bryce, and
I don't even know who that. I don't mean to interrupt, but I see Spriggs. Who's that guy? I don't remember him.
He came in today, replaced Bulaga, who was out with a bad back. So he's their number one backup tackle. I would say he's probably their swing tackle, that he plays both left and right, but I think he's stronger on the right side and more dependable on the right side, because on the left side, you're protecting Aaron's blind side. So I don't know. To be honest, if Bakhtiari were to go down, what they're probably going to end up doing is flipping Lane Taylor from left guard out to tackle, and then bringing in Lucas Patrick to be the left guard, because I don't think they trust Spriggs at left tackle, nor would they trust Byron Bell, who they picked up in the offseason from the Dallas Cowboys. He's a backup lineman, tackle guard, whatever you want to call him. But
gotcha.
So, I mean, other than that, getting back to that 75-yard play where Diggs had the touchdown against the Packers, Diggs just completely bit underneath. And Jair Alexander was covering Adam Thielen pretty well, but he had over the top coverage on Thielen. Instead, he bit, and then that left Thielen and Diggs up for. I mean, they were running go routes, and it left Bryce in the middle of nowhere. And he's like, "What do I do? What do I do?" I have Thielen coming over, and Diggs completely just dropped out of it because he came so hard down on Thielen that by the time he got to Thielen ran right by him, and so did Alexander. But anyway, so on the other side of the ball, then that left Stephon Diggs one-on-one with Devon House, and obviously caught the ball. And then by the time Bryce got there, he was just out of the play because, he was so far off the ball. So the safeties right now are absolutely killing them. And I attribute that lack of pressure and lack of blitzing from Pettin, because he can't trust the back end to hold up, and when you blitz a lot, you expect your safeties to cover a lot of ground, and you expect them to pick up open receivers and tight ends that come out because you're blitzing other guys. And that's not happening.
Clinton Dix, Jesus H. Christ. He made a good play today. I'll give him that. But I vaguely remembered him, with the memory thing, but I got him back a little bit. He played at Alabama, did he not?
Right.
Okay. And his year so far, he looks slow, timid, bad angles, tackling at feet. Mm-hmm. And I know I've seen a lot of comments from people, whether it's on Twitter or whatever, saying the Packers should make a run at Earl Thomas. Do it. From Seattle. Yeah. I think you should. I think it's a no-brainer. I don't know how much money he's making, but Jesus, I mean.
He's a top-paid safety. He's not the top-paid, but he's probably top 5. Yeah. But he's also in the last year of his contract. So that's the other variable to consider too.
Yeah. I mean, money's definitely something, but I don't know how much money do you know how much money the Packers have under the cap right now?
As we stand today, they're right around 11 million under the cap.
Okay. Yeah, it's not much. I know I did hear somewhere, I think it was on Twitter, saying that next year they're going to be over 40 million under, which would be great. So part of me, I'm kind of switching gears a little bit, but if you're talking about depth and just player development and player acquisition, maybe they're going to try and turn this over after this next year because they're going to have a decent amount more to do it, which makes some sense, but I don't know.
And also to consider too, they also have that estimated 40 million, and then whatever they have remaining from this year gets carried over to next year. Let's say next year they have 40. and this year they have 10 or 11 or whatever it is.
Talking
they
50 plus million.
Over, they're going to have 50 plus million in the books to spend on whatever they want. Yeah. So,
you know who I forgot about too on defense? And again, I'm kind of hopping around was, God, his name is escaping. He's a 3-4 linebacker. They drafted him 5 or 6 years ago, but he is not a 3-4 linebacker. He's a defensive end.
Nick Perry.
That's it. I haven't seen him do squat douche. And part of it, most of it, I would say, is not his fault because you talk about being drafted out of position. Yikes. Mm-hmm. He is the prototypical, almost, I would say, defensive end, rather than 3-4 linebacker. Would you agree?
Oh, totally. He fits in that scheme that Minnesota runs. I mean, Everson Griffin, they're all pro defensive end. He's like 275 pounds, and that's right in the same weight class as Nick Perry. I think Nick Perry is 265, 270. So I think Perry would excel in a scheme like that, where he just pretty much pins his ears back and can rush the passer. Yeah. But when he's so far off the tackle, he just doesn't have the shiftiness or the mobility or the the repertoire of moves besides a bull rush to really be a substantial double-digit sack producer every year. You know.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of the last time he made any big plays, and when they re-signed him to, it was a couple of years ago when they re-signed him to a contract. That was a desperation move. I mean, period, end of story. If they don't know that he's not a 3-4 linebacker, and the fans know, that worries me. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but in their defense, and I'm not solely defending them here. In their defense, at that time, they had nobody. They literally had nobody.
I hear that.
So I guess when if you're in that boat, what do? Do you sign the guy that you know, or do you go out and sign a guy that you don't know? You know,
I get
and
that.
I think they felt
part of
me's
going, who put themselves in that position? They had nobody there. Mm-hmm. It's like, so it is, you know, if I'm Nick Perry, I'm like, I'll take this deal. But if I'm the Packers, I'm like, you know, I don't know. I guess that would have been Dom Capers at that time, but I would almost go to management and say, you gave me a square peg in a round hole and you know it and you did nothing about it, you know? Mm-hmm. I don't know. I want to try and be somewhat positive, but at the start of this year has been, you know, troubling to say the least. And
it's been troubling, but I don't think that it should be a surprise to anybody how we've started, because like I said, we went into the year with questions on our offensive line, our pass rush. So far, they've not performed up to the standard. Yeah. And it's been a huge for a lack of a better word, it's been a huge contributing factor to how poorly the team has played up front. And you win football games up front on your offensive line and your defensive line.
It's won in the trenches, you know?
Exactly. There you go. And thus far, you know, the strength of our team was our defensive line with Mike Daniels, Kenny Clark, and Muhammad Wilkerson. Thus far,
Mike Daniels. These are some of these names. I love Mike Daniels,
but he's been pretty much a non-factor thus far, and so has Muhammad Wilkerson before he went down.
I do know that Daniels was he was undersized. I know that. So maybe, you know, what was he drafted 4 years ago, something like that? Maybe he's broken down a little bit, but I know he's undersized. But I know in those first few years, man, I loved him because nobody had a motor like him. The other guys would stand around, and he wanted to tear people's heads off. But maybe that's changed.
No, I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that he's just hitting the wrong areas. His aggressiveness is still there. He's still getting in the backfield, but he's either not finishing the tackle, or like last week against Minnesota, he had Kirk Cousins wrapped up and then he gave up on it.
I did see that. And part of me was like, he was probably like, I don't want to fine.
No,
you know?
No.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's got to factor in.
No doubt.
But
we'll catch Bryce.
That should be factoring to everybody on every team, though.
No shit. I don't think it's like the Clay Matthews thing. Like when I think about that, it almost does seem like they're out against him because there's been 2 tackles he's had that are, I would call them, even in this day and age, I'd call them textbook. There was one where he smashed the guy too late. I'll give him that. I think it was in the Bear game. But there's been 2 where it's like, if you can't hit hit and or sack the quarterback the way he did, football is over as we know it. It's done. So how consistently are the officials, throwing flags or whatever on other teams with guys doing the same thing he is? Or is he that egregiously straying from what's acceptable? Because I know they say, well, he's driving guys into the ground and blah, blah, blah. And I'm going, well, if you're going to sack a quarterback, you have to get him to the ground. You can't smash his head into the ground, but you can't grab his jersey and just toss him aside. You have to, or foot tackle him, you have to get the guy. So that's, I don't know. That's
to the defense of the referees. I have watched, or I should say, followed the rest of the league and the unnecessary roughness penalties that have gone on. And the penalties have been pretty consistent. There was one against the Vikings where Eric Kendricks, I don't know if he sacked or hit Aaron Rodgers, and he got a 15-yard penalty as well. And I was one of those where I was like, are you serious? I mean, I don't want you to touch my quarterback, but that was not a penalty.
Right.
And also today, the Bear, I think it was the Bear Arizona game. There was a lineman that lost his balance and was stumbling and then ran into Mitchell Trubisky, and he got a 15-yard unnecessary roughness penalty, And then last week, which was, you think about it, who are you going to protect in this league? Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady. Tom Brady also got tackled in the pocket, and they didn't call a penalty on him, but it was a little bit lower. It was closer to his knees. But if you do read it's section 9, level 12, or whatever it is, of the unnecessary roughness rule, it talks about how you're not supposed to put all or most of your weight onto an opposing quarterback when he's gotten rid of the ball. And I have to question, do they know the law of physics? Because the law of physics says if you're coming at a guy at, say 5 miles an hour, you're going to go down with the guy too. There's no way around it. You can't roll off of him. You can't not put your weight on him.
Yep. You got G-forces working against you.
There you go.
Yeah.
And honestly, we're on a pace this year. There was an article on ESPN about the QB protection penalties, how it's gone up this year. We're on pace to get close to 200 unnecessary roughness penalties this year.
It's ridiculous.
Just to put that in perspective, 2017, we had 109 total unnecessary roughness penalties. 2016, 92. And the rest of the way up until 2012, averaging around 103 and 102. So it's gone up significantly. And it's not just a Packer thing. It's a league thing. And all teams have felt it one way or the other so far this year.
Well, to me, as long as they're enforcing it consistently, if it is imperative for us to protect these franchise players, so be it. That's fine. I understand it ruins football to many people, but as long as the rules are consistent, I think people can adapt to almost anything. But it just feels like nobody really understands. It's like, is a catch a catch? It's that same kind of thing.
Oh, I wholeheartedly agree. And I think there's so much protecting of the quarterback that I think the defenders are being forgotten. Because I don't know if you saw it today, I sent you guys that link to the Saint and Falcon game where a Falcon offensive lineman went at the legs of this Saint defender and rolled up on his leg and ankle. And from the last time I heard, that Saint defender either tore his knee up or has a severe sprain of the ankle or something like that. So if you can go back to that play, anybody, please do. And what I'm talking about, it's a play, I think, in the later half of the game where I forgot the offensive lineman from the Falcons, but he threw himself at a cornerback from the Saints and rolled up on his leg.
Right.
And it was not a penalty.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing is, I mean, if you have to stay away from the quarterback, you're going to start doing things like that, either intentionally or even accidentally. If you're pulling off of somebody, it's a crowded field, there's unintended consequences on accident, but of course you're going to do some things on purpose.
Right.
So, right. I don't know. It's kind of a mess right now. And I guess, we all fear change, but just feels particularly like kicking us when we're down the last 2 weeks.
I'll tell you what, this is kind of random with relative to, these penalties and all that. But have you guys seen how well Drew Brees is playing?
Yeah. You just passed Favre today.
Yeah.
How old is he? How old is Brees? He's got to be 40 something.
I don't think he's 40 yet, is he?
Is he? Okay, maybe I'm wrong, but his stats and his consistency of play, I'm just watching some of them like, this guy looking real good. That just kind of struck me. And I think he passed Favre on like completions or something, but
yeah.
Impressive. Very impressive.
He is 39. He'll be 40 in January.
Okay. Nice.
Yeah. So I don't know if he's considering this to be his last year or what, but yeah.
If he's playing like this, Jesus, he can play more. I mean, look at Brady. Brady's saying he wants to play till he's 45. How could he not? How could he not? You know what I mean? How could he not?
As somebody who is over 40, I don't know. You hit some walls that you don't think you will, and it's just things don't work the way they used to, and you're trying to run a mile and it's hard all of a sudden. And these guys stay in shape. I get it, but they cannot be at the same intensity that they were. They just can't. I don't know. I know that we're going to keep pushing the boundaries slowly, but I think it's going to be slow. He's not going to play till he's 45. That's crazy talk.
Well, in Aaron Rodgers' case, I think he wants to play up until he's 40. And the way things are going right now, he'll be lucky to play that way.
I know he's going to get smashed because this whole offense is him getting the ball, getting outside the pocket in 1 second, and then throwing darts and taking a lot of hits. They're gonna have to get him if they want him to, quote unquote, survive into even late 30s, shall we say. He is going to have to become a pocket passer. No ifs, ands, or buts.
Okay, let's go. Let's say this season is done. Let's say the Packers barely missed the playoffs. What is your number one need on that team? What is the most defining need on that team?
That's a very good question. Again, and this is kind of off the top of my head, not necessarily thinking about it a ton, but I would say a burner wide receiver, big burner wide receiver.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think so too. Yeah.
Because if you give a guy like Rodgers speed and athleticism and shiftiness, think about what he could do. Do they have needs on defense? You goddamn right they do. Do they have some needs on offensive line? Probably. But what's the most value added? I would say a big burner wide receiver, in my opinion.
I would agree. But is that your top need? What about protecting the guy that's going to get that receiver or get the ball to the receiver?
Yeah, like I said, it's a fair question. That's a very good question. That was the first thing that kind of came to me. The second thing that was going to come to me was actually probably a stud 3-4 linebacker on defense somewhere. But these are, I don't want to say you could go on and on, but it's like you ask 12 people, you could get 12 different answers. But that's part of the problem.
That's part of the problem is that we have so many needs.
Yeah. I mean, you'd hope, say you interviewed 12 people and you had 2 different needs, you'd be like, okay, that's not so bad. You interviewed 12 people, you get 12 different needs. It's not good.
Well, and that's where we stand today is, we just don't have the difference makers. We don't have the playmakers. But in my eyes, you just paid a guy the highest. You just paid Aaron Rodgers the highest quarterback. He's the highest paid quarterback in the NFL. So you have pretty much said you are putting your team on this man's shoulders to carry you. You better protect the hell out of him. Otherwise, that investment, it's like you going out and doing your 401k investment. Yeah. You throw it all at Elliot, a really bad investment. I can't think of one off the top of my head.
A bad investment. Oh boy. I don't know. That's hard right now.
Okay, let's say
the problem with the stock market is that the bad investments like that gets priced in. So like sometimes bad companies can even end up being a good investment because they're undervalued, right? So like it's not the same.
Good point. So I guess what I want to say is, let's say you threw your stock on something that is dead.
Yeah.
Because you don't value that dollar that you put towards it. So right now, do you value the $134 million that you gave Rodgers when you go into this offseason knowing that Bulaga is on the last year of his deal? He's going to be a free agent. Bakhtiari has 2 years left. Lane Taylor has 1 year left after this year. And Corey Linsley signed an extension in the offseason. And Justin McCray, who to me is... he's just, oh man, he's a mess as well.
Yeah.
So that right side of the offensive line right now has been the problem area, and that's where teams are attacking us, and that's where the gentleman that injured Rodgers came from.
Right.
So
who was it that injured Rodgers? Was it McCray or somebody else? I can't remember.
McCray's lack of.
Khalil Mack. I'm sorry.
Oh,
he might have been a part of that play, but I don't know if he was the guy who did it. I guess.
No, he stunted inside, and there was a lineman that I can't think of his name, stunted around, and McCray should have spun outside to pick him up, and he didn't, and then that guy just had a running start to Rodgers and fell on him. So
God help us. When I first saw that, I was like, he tore his ACL, he's done.
Yeah.
Or he broke his leg, he's done.
Mm-hmm.
So now, actually, I had thought about this during the game. I had chit-chatted even with my stepson and a couple other people who were here watching the game. And I go, Rodgers, obviously, even with that brace, you can tell he's still limping around and he's doing the best he can. But, long term and, the franchise itself, his career and all that stuff, what do you think, honestly, about shutting him down for like four weeks?
Or one?
It's got to be more, because I'm willing to bet,
think so?
I'm not a doctor, but I'm willing to bet he has a severely sprained MCL.
Mm-hmm.
And the only way to truly get that sucker back to, we'll say, close to real health is you got to give him, one would help. 2 weeks is where you need to be. And, 4 weeks is, I thought about him going, do they want to make the playoffs? Should they all? Yeah, but I keep looking at Rodgers and I'm going, he's not very effective right now because he's hobbling around on one leg.
Well, it's funny you say 4 weeks, because we have Buffalo, who should be mediocre, but
they killed the frickin' Vikings, didn't they?
Yeah. So
it's a week-to-week league, as they say, right?
But you know what? We might lose either way then to them. So then maybe
we could lose to any team. I'm sorry, we could lose easily to any team.
So if we put Kaiser out there or whatever, like maybe it doesn't matter. But then we have Detroit, and they're in the lead right now against New England. But they should be beatable. Then we have San Francisco, who they lost Garoppolo today. We don't know how far.
Did they really?
ACL.
Yeah, it's probable ACL. And then we have our bye week.
ACL, he's done for the year.
Yeah. So if he has to be out for 4 weeks, like these are the 4 weeks to do it, because maybe we could win 2 of 3, maybe we could win 1 of 3.
And some of it's just kind of what's the wording I'm looking for? It's you got to remember, my brain is still mush, so bear with me. Sometimes I try to think of easy things, and this comes out.
Yeah.
That's all I can say. Risk versus reward. That's what I was trying to say.
Yeah.
Well, and again, he signed a massive contract. He is the franchise, and the security of his career. Because he's out there on a hobbled knee already, and it's not the worst. It's I'll call it. It's the best of the, or is that I'm trying to say the best of the worst ligaments, MCL, because. If he's on it, I think if it's even an LC, obviously an ACL, he's not coming back into that game against Bears. In fact, he's out for the season, basically. Yep. If it's an LCL, I'm not sure how bad that is, but I know pretty much that an MCL is the best of the worst.
Right.
It's the only reason they let him back out there. And he's still got a big old brace. And you can see him kind of hobbling around, and some of the throws he normally makes in his sleep, he ain't making. And I'm going, that foot isn't helping him, or that knee isn't helping him. If he's basically 100% healthy, he's throwing darts everywhere. But if you're on one leg,
if the rest of the team is practicing with Kaiser 6 out of 7 or 5 out of 6 days, whatever, like I don't know. I mean, why not put Kaiser out there? I don't know. We're losing. We lost the game anyway. Let's.
Yeah,
I was thinking they might. I was thinking they were going to pull Rodgers in the late third quarter.
I know you said that. I didn't think they would do that, but but they should have. I mean, obviously hindsight, but I mean, even without hindsight, like why not? Like we're not going to win this. It was pretty clear.
Let me throw this past you guys then. So you mentioned the next 3 games we have at home against Buffalo, on the road against Detroit, at home against San Francisco, and then we have a bye.
Yep.
And then after the bye, we are on the road for 4 out of the 5 games.
Yeah, and they're tough ones.
And the LA Rams, New England, and then we have Miami here to split it up, and then we go back on the road at Seattle and at Minnesota. Wouldn't you say that it's just as important to win these next 3 games, or do you feel confident going in after the bye with a healthy Rodgers against the Rams, the Patriots, and Minnesota?
Well,
could you imagine what the Patriots would do to our team?
But
Rodgers, oh boy!
But it is important. Every game is important. It's the NFL, right? But are we gonna win all 3? Are we gonna win 2 out of 3? I don't see that as being any sort of given. Rodgers, no Rodgers, either way. Because I mean, I guess what I'm saying is maybe we play just as well with Kaiser because they're practicing with him. I feel like some of the dropped passes and where's that coming from? Because that has not been the case all the time.
Right. So you're saying that these receivers aren't seeing Rodgers during the week, and when they come and see him during the game, it's a different ball.
I don't know. I'm saying that could be. I don't know. I mean, I don't know if anybody has an explanation outside of the organization. Hopefully they have a clue, but I don't know.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I mean, I take Andy's point. I would rest him. I mean, if he's not good enough to practice during the week.
And you just look at the overall quality of the team.
Yeah.
And stuff like that.
Yeah.
I would normally never think of that, but then I'm looking at him and I'm looking at some of the balls he's throwing and I'm going, and you're looking at him limping around, and every time he gets sacked, you're cringing your teeth and stuff like that. I'm going, I don't know. It's just like one more.
Yeah, no doubt you are, but he is our best chance at winning every single game.
That's the thing. That's like the catch-22, if you will, is like, if you pull the best player, we're going to stink. But if you leave him out here and he gets hit one more time worse, you don't want any career-threatening thing. I'm not even talking season-threatening. I'm talking career-threatening.
Yeah, I talk real big. Like, I would Benjamin put Kaiser in, but I would take a 50% Andy over 100% somebody else. So there you go.
And I don't even know half the players on the team. So funny. It was the other guy, like Devontae Adams. I was like, it took me a good 4 or 5 days to finally digest and remember who that guy was. Pretty good. Geronimo Allison, same thing. I'm like, Geronimo Allison. I'm like, number one, that's a weird name. Number two, number two, where the hell did he come from? And I'm running a lot of this by my dad when we were watching the Bear game, the first game. And then the Jimmy Graham thing, and then some of these defensive players, and my dad's like, wow, you don't really remember anything, do you? And I'm like, I really don't. I don't know what to tell you.
Well, and you don't remember actually calling Geronimo Allison, a jag.
Oh, did I? Really?
You did.
Oh, no.
I was kind of thinking that.
Because he seems like he's actually played pretty darn good this year. Maybe I'm wrong.
Least of our concerns.
Yeah, no doubt. I would say that.
He is the least of our concerns. But
I'll tell you what. I believe you completely that I said that. I believe completely that I said that. It's funny. Where now? Geronimo Allison, was he an undrafted rookie?
Yes, sir. From Illinois.
Okay.
I think he actually played when Ron Zook was coaching there.
Ron Zook.
Who's our special teams coordinator.
Oh, I know. Ron Zook. My goodness.
You've been saying that a lot lately. My goodness.
I know.
As I'm sure a lot of people have. So
It's, to be perfectly honest, I'm still invested in the Packers and I love doing the podcast and all that, but post E. coli or whatever, there's been a certain, like, during the game, normally I am glued to the couch. I've got my, my snacks and, drinks or whatever. And it's this game. And even the first game with my dad, I was in a completely different place because I couldn't move. I was like atrophied. So I was like sitting in this chair going, okay, I'll watch this. And my dad was there. He was great. He's a huge help. The Viking game, we went to Lambeau. It was kind of the same thing where I'm just gratitude. And I wanted to get back to Lambeau. This past game, I found myself, and this is more almost about like spirituality, I'll say. It's kind of hokey, but it's the truth. I found myself, my daughter was over here and she was playing on the computer and she was doing this, that, and the other. And I was pulling myself away from the game. I bet you I probably missed at least a quarter of the game doing other things, like either, just talking with her and, kind of playing little games with her and whatever. She's 9. And the old me would have been like, what the hell are you doing? Get back to this. But now I'm like, it felt great, to be able to still like the Packers, but not be so damn obsessed with them where, for 3 hours on Sundays, my daughter has to be sucked away from her family, just because you're watching the game. So in a weird way, I really like that, it's a refreshing thing. And I was still able to see a good chunk of the game and all that stuff. But I just kind of wanted to put that out there because, had something like this not happened, I'd be the same old me. There's certain things that really, really changed for the better. And I mean, deeply, on a deep, deep level, in a good way. And I think I just wanted to kind of share that.
No, that's key. I mean, I don't think a lot of people can say that they've been through a life-altering situation, a situation where they almost lost their life. And then when they do come back, especially in your situation, you have a beautiful daughter, you have a loving family, you realize priorities kind of overtake interests,
and no doubt. And it happened quick. And I really just, I jumped all over them because the amount of help I got from, this is kind of, random, but do you remember that movie Regarding Henry with Harrison Ford?
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember like the plot of that or what happened?
Sort of.
He goes, well, I mean, you can look on Wikipedia. I'll give you the short story.
Right.
I think it came out in like the early 90s. So basically Harrison Ford was, I'm not saying he was me, but he was like this big executive attorney, whatever. He was kind of an asshole. And, I think he had kids and he was married, but he was just totally enveloped in that. He goes to get like a pack of cigarettes at I think like a grocery store or something like that. And the guy comes in to rob it. And, the guy's like, give me all your money. And Harrison Ford is, he's still just kind of a jerk and he didn't even realize what he was doing. He's like, man, I'm just trying to buy a pack of cigarettes. And the guy shoots him in the head, but he survives because it's like a dinky little gun. And his whole life changes and turns around. Again, I'm not saying it's that, but there's so many parallels to that. And I watched a little trailer of that on YouTube. And it's like, there's a lot of things within there that have happened with me. I mean, Harrison Ford was an absolute jerk asshole. I like to think I wasn't a jerk asshole, but he almost died and his life changed. And it was very interesting just to kind of watch that and go, oh, okay. So I would encourage you just to kind of get maybe some levity, for lack of a better term. That's kind of how I feel. I literally kind of feel like Harrison Ford in that movie because he almost died. He was damn close. And then his whole life changed, So very random movie, but somebody told me about it after I got out and I saw it and I'm like, oh shit, I do remember this movie. So anyway,
I think we're all in football denial. The fact that I would rather talk about an almost 30-year-old movie.
Yeah, there's some truth in that too, because like the Bear game was awesome. I was like, well, at the end, you're like, this was incredible.
Yeah.
And then the Viking game.
My dad said we should sell our tickets because we will never see a better game than this ever again.
That was a fantastic game. I would say that was basically an all-timer on some level.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then the Viking game, it started to go downhill quick, right? The Viking game, you're like, okay, we're doing pretty good. and then the defense looked like capers. And then today, you're just like, what the hell is this team? So, I mean, like anything, if your favorite sports team starts out pretty good, but then quickly goes downhill, interest essentially wanes. It's just human nature to kind of be like, I don't know.
So I'm looking at the standings right now, and we're all down in the dumps and we're acting like all is lost. But and we have the same record as the Browns.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
But we may have a better record than the Patriots tonight. If Detroit somehow hangs on and beats the Patriots, because they're in the lead, I guess, or at least they were last I checked. I mean, maybe our division is terrible, I thought, but then, if Detroit can be 0-2 and go in and beat New England, as whatever their record shows, they're probably a better team than that. It's all over the place. Like, I don't know. I mean, maybe it's, I don't know. I'm just trying to, be devil's advocate for a second. Maybe things aren't as bad as they seem.
I would agree.
Yes.
Because we are only 3 games into a 16-game season. Like you were mentioning, yep. Elliot, we have, every game is important, no doubt, but we also have 16 games. So, and this team has turned it around as early as 2016. We were 4-6, and everybody was saying, right, McCarthy's got to go. Everybody's got to go. We won the last 6 games, snuck into the playoffs, got up to the NFC Championship. So is it dead? It's not. Are there concerns? You bet there is. But I mean, at this point, it can only get better. We've hit rock bottom today, literally.
I agree with that.
And
that's
in 2016,
a very good observation.
I just want to finish this off. 2016, we lost to be 4-6 to Washington at the same time. So, not trying to segment or put anything together, but we lost the same team, and we were down in the dumps at that time too. So
yeah, good call. Yeah, I'm just I wouldn't if at the beginning of the season, I don't think I would have guessed the positioning of a lot of these teams, but I don't know. I mean, but maybe I would. I mean, I guess I for sure wouldn't put the Bears at the top of our division. I would have put either the Packers or the Vikings.
Yeah. The Bears, not to say the Bears are apparently, I'm looking on Twitter here a little bit. They're beating the Patriots, which is all fine and dandy.
Detroit
Detroit, Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
And there we go again. Bear with me. Pardon the pun. But Detroit's one of those teams. You talk about enigma. It's like, I think Matt Stafford's pretty good, and I'm a little biased because I went to UGA, and he went to UGA, and he was the number 1 pick. But that team is, they've gone 0-16, but they haven't gone to playoffs in forever. But they seem like they have the talent, but they just do nothing with it. What I'm kind of getting there is, it's got to be very hard to be a Detroit Lions fan. We're sitting here pissing and moaning.
I know.
Games in
Brilliant.
About you talk about relativity and all that, and it's like the Packers, I would say, are underachieving. Yes, but being a Bears fan or even a Browns fan, good God, or I mean a Lions fan, or a Browns fan, good God. I mean, when's it going to turn?
Right? Yeah. Well, and then when they and they pull out a great game, they probably party all week. Who knows? I don't know. It's 13-3 right now. I don't know. Am I rooting for the Lions? I'm not sure. I think I am. It's a very strange position.
I'll tell you what. I hate the Patriots with an unbridled passion, so I will root for the Lions.
It's like everybody used to say about anybody but Dallas, right? It's anybody but the Patriots.
Yeah. Maybe the Patriots are finally. I'm looking at some of the players on their depth chart and some of the receivers and some of, like the age of Brady, if you will. And you're going, maybe this is the start of the end. But then you look at Belichick. He's an incredible coach. I mean, let's put it this way. Say you put Aaron Rodgers on Belichick's team. Could you imagine what that guy could do?
Oh, right.
He might have 7,000 yards a season.
And he got 2 hands full of Super Bowl rings.
Yeah.
No question.
Yeah.
And when I say that and think about that, I go, McCarthy's a janitor compared to Bill Belichick.
Yeah. Well, but so
You know
are
what I mean?
but
like
so
that
are
one.
most of the coaches in the NFL.
Yeah,
I mean,
Belichick is.
he's the all-time best coach.
Yeah.
He's the all-time greatest coach.
But I'll say this, and everybody knows he's a schemer. You know, he'll find a way to beat you and exploit it. He's not like McCarthy, who's like, I'm going to do whatever the hell I want, even if it's trying to shove a square peg in a round hole for 3 hours.
No, he does everything. He does the research. He does the trades. He does the schemes. I don't think the guy sleeps.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I watched, like I said, I watched that Football Life last night when they were talking about Lawrence Taylor.
Yeah.
And the one before it was Bill Parcells. And Belichick was like a assistant under him. You should have seen some of that footage of Bill Belichick when he was like 25 years old. That's some funny stuff.
Oh, yeah. I'm sure it is.
He still wore a hoodie, but he looked like he was in high school. It's funny.
Oh my.
Yep.
So some fast takes. You guys got any? I think we kind of merged the two.
Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah, and that's all good. I don't think there's any harm in that. So, any fast takes? Let's talk about the good.
Agreed.
What good happened in the last two games? Can we come up with three good things?
We're relatively healthy. I mean, give or take a few, but I mean, Muhammad Wilkerson and Aaron. But I mean, overall, team wise, we don't have a lot of guys that are missing games. Josh Jones is probably the only one that's missed the first 3 games. So health wise, we're there.
That is a good call. Yeah.
Yep. And I mean, I'll say it's somewhat relative, but Aaron Rodgers on one leg is still pretty damn good.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously 2 legs would help more, but he's made some incredible throw. I mean, that fourth quarter against the Bears, the video of that should be enshrined in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. That was
it probably will.
That was incredible.
Well, and he also he ran at least one during the Vikings game, and I think he ran at least one today, and he looked fine-ish.
Yeah.
So rest or no rest, as long as he's getting better, that should hopefully get. That should only improve.
That's the hard thing. It's like, I mean, when he's playing on it and you're playing professional football on it,
right?
Are you hurting it even more? Who the hell knows? I hope not. But another positive is Aaron Jones. He looked fantastic. He looked like a running back we haven't had since, I'm trying to think. Amon Green. I don't know. I'm just kind of throwing that out there, but I don't know much about Aaron Jones. I lost all memories of him until
and that could also that could be a function of the Redskins doing their homework and knowing that we're not going to run the ball.
Yes, that's true.
So I think that's a piece of that. I mean, that doesn't. I don't want to take anything away from that. Like he did his job, so that's great.
I agree with you.
Yeah. So that's 2 things. We got 2. I was hoping for 3.
Well, I have one for you. I think our 5th round. Drafted punter has exceeded expectations.
As funny as that is, he is a weapon. When I first came out of my little coma and I found out they drafted a punter from the 5th round, I was like, first thing I thought was BJ Sander. Remember BJ Sander?
Oh my gosh,
yes.
Yeah.
And what an atrocious, I mean, that was just a miscarriage of justice, that whole thing was. But then I saw him kick, and he's a weapon. He's a punter, but he's a weapon. He was skied like a 60-yarder and had like 5 seconds of hang time, and I'm like, okay, I'll call that a weapon.
And we punted
but he is a punter
2 more times than we should have today. So yeah. It's too bad that every silver lining has to have a cloud attached with this.
But hey, played at Alabama, baby. If you're going to play somewhere, play at Alabama, even if you are a punter. What do you guys? I don't know if I necessarily call it like a positive. I'm just kind of an overall question. What do you guys think of Mason Crosby?
He's decent.
He's got to be the highest paid kicker in the league, isn't he?
No, he's not. Justin Tucker is at this point.
Okay.
I would say that his leg strength has probably gone down a bit over the years. I mean, he's probably, what is he, a 13-year, 12-year, 13, 14-year veteran?
His first year, I remember, was Brett Favre's last year.
Okay.
As a Packer, so 2007.
Okay. So we're definitely talking double digits thus far. And I would say one thing with his leg strength. I don't think he's his strength is his. I don't think his leg is as powerful as it used to be. I think there's definitely some of that old man coming into play here, where he's losing some of that strength there.
Yeah, that miss that he had in the overtime against the Vikings, what really? I mean, I can't remember how long it was, but that really sucked.
52.
It was a long one, but the fact that that one hurt, I'm not going to lie, and it got me thinking about him, because at the time when I was at the game, I'm like, I thought he was the highest paid kicker, and I'm looking at him, and he's like all gray hair, and I'm like, is it time to move on from Crosby? I don't know. Who the hell knows? But to your point, Jeremy, another offensive player, about a good player that I need to be more in tune with, to be honest, is David Bakhtiari. I had forgotten how good that guy is.
Mm-hmm.
And if you say he's top 3 in the league, I believe you. And again, some of this is the brain, and some of it is I just need to watch him more. But I do remember a little bit before all this crap happened to me that he was a really good left tackle, and he was, for the most part, he was pretty much available. I'm trying to think if he was ever hurt a lot. So, if you have a top 3 left tackle in the league protecting Aaron Rodgers, nothing wrong with that. I guess it's the rest of the O-line that's a problem.
Yeah, the left side of the line is the strength, and Bakhtiari last week shut out Everson Griffin, he's an all-pro defensive end. But the right side of the line is the Achilles heel of this team thus far, and it will continue to be unless McCray just somehow miraculously comes out of nowhere and plays Superman.
Yeah. I can't believe Bulaga. I always thought, and maybe, like I said, I hate to use this as a crutch, but it's just reality. In my head, and the previous seasons and whatnot, Bulaga always struck me. Was he ever like a Pro Bowler?
Very close.
Or was he just kind of good?
I think one year he was an alternate, but I don't think he ever was voted as a Pro Bowl player. He was very close many times.
Okay. They drafted him the Super Bowl season. I know that, 2010. So, I mean, he was young and he got thrust in there and he made all the way to Super Bowl and he protected Aaron Rodgers' right side. So that's nothing to sneeze at. But, to your point, who's the right guard? McCray? Is that who the right guard is?
Yeah.
Okay. And yeah, I mean, Bulaga looks like he's losing a step. McCray doesn't seem very good. And Lindsley's always been pretty much a Pro Bowl center. Has he not been?
He's solid, if not spectacular. He's definitely in that. He's not in the top tier centers, but he's in the next level.
Okay, I'll take that. And but yeah, McCray and Bulaga, they look to be kind of on the same type of tier, and that's kind of, I don't want to say it's troubling. I mean, you can't have Pro Bowlers all across the line, obviously, but if you need some help, give him some help. And I'm trying to think of the last time I've seen McCarthy give troubling signs of lines or whatever some help. He wants all the guys out in the pass part, which I get too.
Right.
I get that. But if your quarterback's getting pressured in 1 second, do something else. So,
I mean, against the Bears, they didn't give Bulaga any help against Mac.
Oh my God. It literally, because all my dad and I were talking about was Khalil Mack and how good he was. And then when he came out there, it's as if they forgot that the Bears had traded for Khalil Mack. That's how egregious all the stuff was against him. When I saw his stat line at the end of the first quarter, I'm like, this is a miscarriage of justice by McCarthy. I mean, his stat line was obscene. And I'm like, I don't know. So, and apparently the Packers tried to trade for Khalil Mack, if I remember correctly. Is that
in theory?
Yeah. In theory. And then Russ Ball looked at the money and goes, I don't think so.
I don't know. Sometimes I wonder if they just, pretend like they're interested to get the
check it out.
I think that's probably it.
I don't know.
Who's the last big player free agent they signed?
Charles Woodson.
Well, the last one that worked out. Yeah, no question. Yeah,
that's a very good. Actually, that might have been Ted's best free agent ever. Because I remember when they signed him, Charles Woodson. All of their teams were afraid of him because he had just broken his leg, and they said he was injury prone. Yeah. Charles Woodson is probably one of my all-time favorite Packers. I will say,
amazing. Yeah,
he was. Everything about the dude was awesome.
Yeah,
and he grew as a person because when he came out of college, I mean, he was an arrogant, cocky, in your face kind of a guy. And then he ended his career in the NFL as probably one of the most nostalgic, one of the most respected individuals out there. And he respected the game. He respected everybody on the field. And
I think being in Green Bay itself
changed him.
Football town and all that. I agree with that.
That's a good point.
I love Woodson. I have a picture. I went to Super Bowl, the Super Bowl the Packers won in 2010. I was very lucky to do that. And at the very end, I brought my camera and all that. And at the very end, there's a picture or there's footage or whatever. And I actually got a picture of him holding the Lombardi trophy with his arm in a sling. Cause he broke his collarbone that game, arm in a sling with the Lombardi trophy with probably 50 camera people or paparazzi around him. Nice. I got this picture of him. It was really good. And then I kind of blew it up a little bit and framed it and put it on my wall. It's cool.
Oh,
yeah.
Oh, don't ever have me at your house and don't ever leave me unattended.
Right?
Oh my goodness. That's funny. That's funny. You know what's funny? You could say the same for me right now. I don't know if you guys get that joke, but
I didn't know what went over my head.
I can't be left alone anywhere, really.
Oh, right. Gotcha.
So it's like I could fall down and crack my skull and God knows what. It was. I could tell you guys some funny stories now if you'd like to. Funny related to all this stuff if you want to hear. They're just a little random, but so the first time I went back to my house, I think it was like 3 days after I came home from Green Bay. And again, my memory at that point was it was a pile of mush. I mean, I still had a ton of anti-seizure meds and I was all hazy. So I walk into my house and there's a salsa bike in my living room. And I turn into my mom and I go, "What the hell is this?" And I said it just like that. I was like stunned. And she goes, "Well, that's a bike that you bought." And I go, "I already have a road bike. Why would I buy another road bike?" I mean, and so it turns out, it was about a week later that I found out that I bought it in April, and it's actually what they call a gravel bike. I don't know how in tune you guys are with all the specifics of bikes, but if you have a road bike that's paved, right? Gravel bike is like, we'll call it, basically gravel in between mountain biking and paved. So that made more sense. But when I first saw it, I thought it was a road bike and I was just stunned. And I was like, "What the hell is this? Why is this here? Why would I have two bikes?" And then, so after that, I went I went in my bedroom and there's two guitar cases. You guys know I'm in a band. I play bass. And I go, "Wait a minute. Why is there two cases? I only have one bass." So I pull one out. And I go, "I remember this. This is the Ernie Ball Music Man I've had for about 16 years. Really nice bass." And open up the other one, and it's custom bass, really nice. And I go, and it was the same thing. Look, I go, "What the hell is this?" I go, "Where did I get this?" So it turns out right before this whole episode happened, I made this awesome custom bass with a buddy of mine who's a woodworker. But I totally forgot that it ever even happened. So I was convinced I bought this bass for X thousands of dollars somewhere and wasted money or whatever. And it gets even better. So at that time, I didn't know what was going on. I'm like, whatever. Go down the basement, go into my quote music room that I have, and there's like a guitar stand. So all this stuff is music related except for the bike. But it's funny looking back now. I have an acoustic guitar, I have an acoustic bass, and there's three areas where you can have guitars: acoustic guitar, acoustic bass, and I look over and there's this awesome looking electric guitar. And I went over and looked at it. It's a Gibson Les Paul custom silver burst guitar. I actually posted this on Facebook. You guys might have seen it. Mm-hmm. That is like one of the best guitars you can get, quality wise and potentially price wise. And I looked at it and I look back and I go, "What the hell is this?" And my mom goes, "Well, you bought that guitar, and I go, "What happened to I had an Epiphone, which is it's like a Gibson Les Paul Lite. It's a nice guitar. I had a black Epiphone guitar." And I was like, "What happened to my Epiphone? I have had that for like 15 years. She goes, "You gave that to your nephew, Ethan, for his birthday." And I go, "I did what?" And she goes, I was like, again, in the brain, you're like stunned, just like money just flying through your brain. And I go, "Why the hell?" And she goes, "Well, you bought that after you gave him that guitar." And I go, "Okay, but why would I buy this guitar. I go, I don't even play guitar that well. Why would I buy such an expensive guitar? Turns out I got a pretty good deal on it, all this stuff. But it was like, I walked in my house and in 10 minutes, I saw 3 things. I had no idea where they came from, no idea why I bought them. And I thought I spent like $20,000 total on everything. And it turns out I didn't get anywhere near that. And as my memories came back, they all made sense. But if you would have been there when I was there, I was like stunned and pissed at the same time. It was actually kind of entertaining. So that was at the height of the memory loss. And
we should all live life like that. Like, okay, so if I make this decision, is the me from a year from now that loses his memory going to look back and go, what the hell?
And that's what I did on every one of them. I go, what the hell is this? Because I just couldn't believe what I was looking at, you know?
Nice.
But I learned that I made, were they great decisions? Probably not. Were they better fiscal decisions than what I had originally thought? Yes. But I thought that I made those decisions while I was like in the E. coli phase before I went into the like the ICU at Bellin. I thought I was like out of my mind when I did this stuff. And I'm like, I'm going to get these assholes for selling me this stuff. But so that's kind of funny. Figured I'd share it.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
I love it. I love humor, period, even if it's at my own expense. So
I think you like it better when it is at your expense.
I think I kind of do too, to be honest.
Sort of a weird thing you got going there, Andy.
Well, I am a weird dude. And who knows how weird I'll be the rest of my life. But
So we recorded all of this
sweet
for posterity, and I don't see a way to divide it into 2 episodes very easily, so I'm not going to. And
I honestly think it's a good idea to let the whole somebody there's something interesting about just the organic nature of just letting it go. This is
just a sneak peek into Andy Hetzel's mind. I think
and what's it going to be a week from now, a month from now? I think I'm going to be damn near close to where I was baseline, probably within, if I had to guess, and this is just guesstimation, but I would say within the next 4 to 6 weeks. But between now and then, you're going to get a silly me, and you're going to get a me that probably won't remember a lot of shit. So
it's all good.
Yeah, could be worse. I tell everybody, I'm like, I don't remember this, but I'm like, look, I could be dead. And that's the honest to God truth. I had a doctor pull me aside about an hour after I woke up, and I was so heavily sedated. And so, I mean, again, I was just like out of it. And they kind of, they put the light in my eyes kind of thing, with the flashlight. And they go, look, I got to tell you, you're doing great, but you are almost dead for about X amount of days. That's hard to take. That was unbelievable. But they wanted me to know how close things were to being over, So that's the reality of it, man.
Yeah. And that's perspective.
No kidding. That's what I said. If you can't get perspective from that, you'll never get perspective. That's what I say.
Mm-hmm.
So nobody's allowed to take long naps anymore, and Andy's not allowed to. I don't know how you got that.
I'm not allowed to make crazy purchases that have no bearing on anything, basically.
No, I think it's important that you keep making those crazy purchases.
Right.
You need to surprise future Andy.
See my face. I'm telling you, you should have seen my face when I saw the electric guitar, because I look back at, like, I got on eBay and I look back at some of the money, and it wasn't nearly as bad as I thought. But say I bought that brand new, and I know Gibson Les Paul Customs. I had this idea in my head. I'm going, oh, you really fucked up, Andy. You really screwed this up. I was really scared. But anyway, got better once you see the bills.
Speaking of the bills.
Oh my God. Yeah.
That's our game next week.
Bills plus bills that way. And I've only received 2 bills from this medical experience. I can't wait to see all these bills pile in. It's going to be interesting.
We could probably get Aaron Rodgers to cover some of it.
No kidding. I'll be like, dude, I was in a coma when you got your extension. Throw me the phone.
He might. He's a good guy.
It's funny.
All right. Should we hang it up?
I think we're good. I think we did. And again, guys, I really appreciate and letting me, in some ways, figure out some of the players on the roster and some of the things that have happened within the past, we'll say, calendar year, because it was a mess. So I appreciate you letting me kind of go off on some of this stuff.
I think it's fun. I think, and you know, the honest truth is, anybody listening, they're likely to not be as good as Andy at 100% anyway. So talking through those things and explaining some of the thought processes, I think, is ultimately going to be a good thing anyway. We should do more of that.
Oh, I like I said, I really appreciate that. The amount of people that have helped me through all this stuff is family, friends, you guys, everything, and everything means something, no matter how trivial. So I really, really, really appreciate it.
Well, we really appreciate you being back, and you know, full sailing ahead from here on out.
Yep,
Yeah.
Should be. I have not had any setbacks of any kind, of any nature, which I think is a good thing.
Well,
right.
hopefully the Packers don't have another tank next week, because
Oh,
you know,
my goodness.
I can understand where that might put you back a little bit again.
I know.
3 weeks in a row.
No
Like,
setback.
why are you back in here again? Well, the Packers gave me a hemorrhage.
Yeah. All right, we're hanging it up. Hold on.
Hey, folks, your podcast.
I know, right?